about AI, I have learned from AI. So like half of what has gotten me here has been me asking questions about, well, what else can you do? Like, what else can you do without being connected to any other entity because you are non-HIPAA compliant? What can you help me with in my optometric practice? Like, this is how I built the course I've made, was like, what else am I not thinking of here that a technician can do with ChatGPT in an office? And then just keep going and keep asking the question, and then thinking about it in a different way, and then asking the question in a different way. And I know that sounds super complicated to people who have not used AI, but you do have to ask a good question, and then it will give you an answer that'll spark some other thought in your brain, and then you ask the question a different way to get a better answer, or a more, it's almost like an extension of your own brain. You're just sort of thinking out loud, and it's thinking out loud, and y'all are brainstorming things together.
Hello and welcome to the Crystal Podcast on iCode Media. Today I'm going to have a great conversation with my friend, Dr. Haley Perry. She has done a ton of stuff within AI, and you've probably seen a number of webinars that she's done on AI. But what I want to talk, and we could talk about that as well, Haley, but what I want to talk about today is kind of your view. The most of where AI questions I get include what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use, and then opportunities what ICD-10 codes do I need to build with this CPT code. Thoughts about it. What CPT codes can be built together and what can't? And my favorite, what the future, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote, and specifically professionals like us? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education for this specific purpose.
I kind of know the fear.
Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding, so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. I'm not going to share them yet. We developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. When you think about AI, we also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. And we'd love to work with you. Not even to our profession. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Patients, and then subsequently our profession, where if AI goes there, what are people worried about?
So already, there's already fundus cameras that are FDA approved that are being used in primary care offices for diabetic retinopathy. So our profession is petrified of that, and that is going to take away our pay. I think that's the root fear, is that is going to take away our patients, and that we are not going to have a profession, and that we are thus going to be irrelevant and go away. And I don't see that at all, because AI has an extent to which it is reliable. And, the smart thing to do right now is, if a primary care doctor would see this and realize there's a problem, and send to eye care sooner now than they would have previously. But it's not a replacement. I don't think anybody sees that as a replacement. And so the core fear here, though, is that it's going to replace us, and that we're not going to have a job. And the other fear is our patients aren't going to be cared for as well, because nobody cares for them as well as we do.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think, on the one hand, I would disagree a little bit with you on that. I would say that for some of us, if our value in a patient who has diabetes in their overall arching care is to simply identify whether there's blot hemorrhages or cotton wool spots or macular edema or proliferative disease, if that's our only value, then we ought to be replaced. Honestly, like, if that's our only value to that patient, and we're just sending a letter back to the primary care doctor, then we ought to be replaced by AI. That would be my position. And that's probably like a bold position, and it's not the right thing. But I think our value is so much deeper, and we have the opportunity to have such a deeper value. So on the one hand, those technologies they kind of play into the idea that the only role that eye care plays in patients who have diabetes is detecting retinopathy and reporting that retinopathy to the primary care doctor. But you know as well as I do that, most studies would suggest, although there are some that say that patients who have diabetes are not as at greater risk for developing glaucoma, but that those patients are at greater risk for developing glaucoma. They're at greater risk for neurotrophic keratopathy, for dry eye, for fluctuation in their vision, for cranial nerve palsies. So, if our role is primarily just like seeing something and reporting it, we're done. And those doctors who are practicing that way, they have a very short runway, I would say. But if you identify and understand, like, hey, listen, I've built a relationship with this patient. I'm going to identify the retinopathy as good as or better than any AI can. And maybe I'll even implement AI into my practice to detect it super early, like where it makes my job easier. But really the role is I'm thinking about all those other things that the patient has. And I'm also thinking about developing the relationship so I can actually sit down with the patient and say, hey, what is the problem with like how are you at using your medications, at keeping your A1C down, at, how's your lifestyle, like incorporating those things. That's where our value is, in addition to like all the other diseases that patient has. So I know that's not what you're saying, but I would disagree to say that can replace us. I think it can if you're practicing that way and you're not building the relationships.
Oh, I don't have that fear that it's going to replace us, but I think that's what.
Yeah.
I think that people that think that way are thinking small. And the best analogy I can think of with that is when you have, were people ticked off about the internet when it was invented? You know what I mean? Like, were you really upset that but I got all these books over here. What am I going to do with all my books? You know what I mean? Like my encyclopedia. What am I going to do with my encyclopedia? So it's like,
you're going to upload them to ChatGPT and then it's going to tell you anything you want to know.
Yeah. It's just a difference in getting information and how quickly you get it and how quickly you tie connections together. That's essentially what AI is. It does it faster. And I think that people who don't realize that this is a train that's coming anyway, you're going to get left behind if you continue thinking that small. Like it is going, like if you're not a person that evolved with it, then yeah, you might become irrelevant. But if you're rolling with it, because gosh, there's just so much it can do. It can make your life easier. It can make things for your patients better. Then you're going to get left behind if you're not jumping on this train. I'm a huge believer in that.
Yeah, well, I think to allay that fear, I would say, if our primary care doctors that we would work with we haven't done a good job educating them on the role of those patients that have other things, and if they're just trying to check a box, then they're going to check the box, right? They're going to use their AI fundus photo and check the box, but they also have to realize that we have to help them understand the role that we play in all of those other aspects. Okay, so that's diabetes. What about like refraction systems and being able to determine patients' prescriptions more effectively than we can? Is that on the horizon? Is that something that's going to, again, we see a lot of virtual doctors now in a lot of these locations, right? I'm obviously, you and I are in private practices, but when you look at a lot of commercial practices, there are remote physicians that, and you could do this in private practice as well, but it's very common, or it's becoming more common in remote practices. Is AI going to take those jobs away?
So, okay, I do a ton of dry eye in my practice, and I don't do my refractions myself. And so my technicians are doing that for me. So when it comes to me and looking at my prescriptions, I am analyzing what their lensometry readings were, how they were reading with that, looking at the autorefraction, looking at what we finally ended up with. How are they seeing there? Do those numbers match up? Do they make sense? Because 9 times out of 10, if you're evaporating behind the phoropter, it's skewing some of those numbers. So I have learned, and there's a finesse to how that I've gotten there, but I've learned like what looks more like dry eye just from a refraction versus not. And that's where, like, could I make an algorithm? about what's in my brain and tell and teach an AI to do that, I don't know if I could. And so could it move numbers? And based on what a patient says, it will probably get there. Is there going to be the finesse there of studying that? Just because I don't know if I would know how to put into words these feelings that I have about these numbers. Does that make sense? Am I being clear here? But like studying these numbers,
yeah,
I don't know if I could.
Art. It's the art of what we do.
Yeah, and that's where like, could it change dials based on patient responses? It probably will be able to do that. I don't know how soon, because I don't think anything's on the horizon with that yet. But that's not true. There are already autorefractive systems out there that are coming up with patient prescriptions. So this is probably closer than I have even thought about. But yeah, the art of it is not there for sure, and that's where the art of it is not what's going away for us.
So okay. So then, besides those fears, what other fears are you hearing when you talk to doctors across the country that that I'm not identifying? So if it's not going to be able to replace, or if it can do the diabetes screening evaluation of the retina, and it does a good job there, and I would think that, from a lot of things I've read, even like radiology, there's a lot of opinions that like reading CT scans and X-rays and MRIs, like that's done. Like that is pretty much, at some point you're probably going to have a radiologist overseeing what it spits out. But now a radiologist that I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I don't have any idea how many scans they can read in a day. But my guess is that with the help of AI, there's probably some radiologists who are thinking, look, I can read 3 or 4 times that in a day, because I've trusted AI, I've helped it build it, etc. So I think things like OCT, managing your OCT, your progression analysis on your RNFL, having things just like your GPAs will do, is kind of point different things out. I think that's all going to be good. Being able to identify what we have already for years with with your visual field printouts, and how it watches progression over time and kind of alerts you. It's doing the same thing that the doctor's going to do anyway. It just helps you arrive at that quicker. So I agree with you there. What am I not thinking about that people are worried about?
Well, I think this is like a product of COVID, because I mean, maybe I just wasn't paying attention before that, but after COVID, there's so much, whether it is valid or invalid, there is so much mistrust of lots of things. And I think maybe that plays a part into this as well.
It's valid, Haley. It's valid.
Yeah.
That mistrust is absolutely valid.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, no question.
So that's where like, now so it's like, who's watching me? Who's taking my information? I mean, you could take this to what is that chemtrail from that airplane gonna do to me? Like there's all kinds of things, right? So like, who is on their end? It's like, who is watching this AI? What is are my questions? What is it teaching someone else? They're keeping my information? What are they going to do with my information? That kind of stuff. They're going to steal my identity. Those are things that I've heard about. And so the truth is, there is, with ChatGPT, there is a group of people in California that is watching the questions being asked and training it when it's not answering the way that you wanted it to be said or done. And it's learning from, that's what's helping it learn more, is that they are kind of looking at some of these things. Okay, so this is a controversial thing that I do. I will copy like a list of transactions from my bank account, and I input it in there because I want it to be put in a spreadsheet and I want it to be done quickly. Do I care that they know that I purchased, my software on a certain date and how much that costs? Like, I don't really care, but someone else somewhere is going to be really nervous that that's going to like do something to them. And so that's where, that's the other biggest thing that I've heard, is the mistrust of how the information is being used and what is it going to do. And they don't know. I think that part right there is the fear of the unknown for them, just because they don't know what someone could do with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I think that's a great point. I mean, I don't think much about it. Honestly, my initial thought typically is, well, I'm just not going to upload anything that has patient information, right? I'm going to not break HIPAA when I'm doing that. But you and I think he's probably reached out to you too, because when I did your talk, I used AI to analyze contact lens pricing, and it was an AI that you built. It was a GPT that you built, and I did it. You and I had talked about this about a month and a half ago, and I used your model to analyze contact lens pricing, and then I did a little presentation on it. And basically, the presentation was about how do we understand the when things are so complicated in terms of pricing, and I pay this for that, and I get this rebate, etc. So it was really helpful for me, and the presentation I did for the people was like really helpful for them. Like, oh, this is really good. But like, there was a guy, and I don't know if he's reached out to you as well, but he was concerned. I mean, he was like, and it's somebody that I have a ton of respect for. But he was like, Chris, who can get access to this? And are all the people going to have access to this exact same thing? It's like, well, no, I mean, I suppose they could, but like, they can get access now if they wanted access to that stuff. That's my thought. Is like everything that's on this right now, I mean, is available. And so but maybe that's just, we're a little younger than he is, and maybe we've kind of grown up with it a little bit more. We just don't care as much that they know where we are. But maybe I need to be more worried about that.
Well, so to make that person feel better, and this is one of the things, learning about AI and knowing what AI is in certain situations versus others is helpful. I think educating yourself on it is really important, just so that you can like calm some of your fears. So OpenAI is where someone is watching it. Someone is sitting somewhere else and looking at this information. Closed AI is where you're using the platform, and what's been, created based on all of this other OpenAI. It has learned from all the OpenAI, and so, but you yourself, you have to pay for that. And so when you pay for a closed AI session, which is what I did when I created that GPT, that information is not used to train their models. It does not learn from you in those instances. And so that's where it can make mistakes, and it's not going to learn from the mistakes that you're using on that side because you have closed that session. And so that's where when I made that.
Okay. So no, sorry to interrupt, because I want to go into that, because I think that's really helpful for the people listening. First, you trust that it's not shared, right? And maybe that's the reality. It's like most of us might not care about it being shared as long as it can't be used against us, right? So like maybe that's even if you don't trust that closed AI is truly closed, that somebody can't get in there and see it, which I think that's suspicious. Like I'm just kind of like, well, I have to trust you that it's actually closed. But the reality is like, okay, well, if there is something on there and it becomes open, right? Like if somebody goes in there and mines that and says, hey, Haley Perry is looking at X, Y, and Z. Now here you go, everybody. Well, then all of a sudden it's not closed, and then nobody trusts it anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? Like she's asking questions about, here's what she's spending on her business credit card, IRS. Maybe that's not what she should be doing. Like as soon as that happens, nobody trusts it anymore. But that's what you and I have, right? Like if we pay for it, so you're saying if I pay for the GPT, if I pay for ChatGPT within that segment, it's still not HIPAA compliant if I understand correctly, right? But I can still upload things with some additional confidence that they're not going to be mining that data and pulling it out. Is that correct?
That's correct. So there are lots of security certifications that it has and that they have posted. I can't remember all of them, and probably most of our listeners here would not know what they were anyway. But you can look up what that means to have the secure ChatGPT. It's the Teams account. Like I have paid for a Teams account so that my team members can use it with me. And so in doing so, no one's looking at what I'm doing, at least according to these security certifications. But this is not HIPAA compliant because I'm not signing a business agreement with them. And so that's where if that could happen, oh boy, it would be so much fun. I'll be able to do so much more. But right now, I just have to de-identify everything. And so yeah. But I mean, could someone turn it into open? I don't know. Maybe.
Hello, dedicated optometrists. Are you looking for a way to support your patient's vision and overall eye health? Let me introduce you to Vision Edge Pro, a visual performance supplement that stands out in our profession. Vision Edge Pro contains a balanced blend of mesozeaxanthine, lutein, and zeaxanthine in a 10-10-2 ratio. This combination has been scientifically shown to increase macular pigment density, which enhances visual performance, including contrast sensitivity and vision in glare situations. Additionally, Vision Edge Pro provides 300 milligrams of DHA and EPA, fulfilling the daily requirements for omega-3s as recognized by the leading health organizations. This ensures your patients receive the essential nutrients their eyes need for optimal health. Whether it's for everyday screen use, night driving, or enjoying the outdoors, Vision Edge Pro supports your patients in seeing their best. Recommend Vision Edge Pro for your patients today and help them achieve clearer, healthier vision. Contact your local MacuHealth representative for more details. Vision Edge Pro, because your patients deserve the best in eye health. Go to MacuHealth.com and use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout for special discounts. Do you think, so can we take a little bit of a step back, because you brought up some topics that I think are probably worth exploring. If you have a, like, how does AI actually work? Like, what do you know what it actually does? Sometimes I'm a little bit frustrated because I'll sit and I'll teach it. I'll build my own GPT and then I'll teach it. And then I come back like a week later and I want it to do the same thing. Like, I just want it to think like me. Like, could you imagine? Same thing. It's like, my job would be so much easier if I could teach my GPT how to analyze de-identified records in terms of chart auditing. So I've gone down and I've spent hours like teaching it. And then I go away a week, and then we get another, request for chart audits, and then I'll kind of play with it there, and it, it's all de-identified, and it doesn't it's not right. It kind of does what it wants to do. So it's not like a spreadsheet that if I can create this perfect calculator, it's going to make the calculation every time. So tell me how that works and why it does what it does.
Well, I think that's where most people get so frustrated with it right off the bat, because we are used to, like you said, like creating a spreadsheet and it does what's going to do. That took a lot of time to make a spreadsheet, though. So that's where you were hopeful that this would make this a lot easier. But we're so used to Google. We're so used to like Googling a question and then looking through the answers that we might want to get. So, and then we decide which one of these answers we want to get and clicking on the link, etc. And that's where this one is like a conversation. Like, you really do, like, so teaching it, like, I'm glad to hear you say that. You really do have to talk to it like it's a person, like it's a friend. I had a friend in my neighborhood who is AI curious and wanted to see if what I had could help them do their job faster. And he gave me like 20 spreadsheets to analyze. And so with AI, and to help come up with a comprehensive report for his client. And in doing so, I realized it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And I voice to text with it a lot just because I don't have the time. I'm trying to do everything as fast as possible. And so in talking, I'm sitting in my friend's house and I'm like, no, I'm like talking on my phone. That is not what I want you to do. I wanted you to do it this way, that way, yada, yada, yada. And my friend Beth is behind me going,
you know how to do this. I've taught you how to do this before.
Yeah. My friend Beth, she's telling people about this later. And she's like, yeah, she's just sitting there on my couch, like arguing with it. Like it was so weird. But that's where, I mean, it's a conversation. Like you have to tell it what it's doing well, what it's not doing well. Is it going to do it well every time? No. A human also, same, probably wouldn't do that well every time. But that's where it does mess up. It catches itself messing up sometimes, and then you'll get an email after the fact that says elevated error rate or whatever, that because it knows that it's not doing things well. But so you do have to argue with it. You have to talk to it. You have to keep teaching it. So that's where if it's doing it, and it will do it well one time, and then it will totally mess it up another time. And so that's where what I like to do is if I'm really going down to like truly, I need this to be very detailed and very correct. I'm going to run this once. I'm going to wait and maybe run it again on another day, another time. I might run it 2 or 3 times to see, the frequency of getting the same answer, just to see, that's how much I'll know if I believe it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think, as I think about it, I think it's almost like we want it to be, we want it to play with ideas. Like if you can train it well, then where you can find value is like, look at this data and understanding everything I know about this and I've taught you. What am I missing here? Like it would be just like you and I having a conversation, but that thing is a super expert in this one area. And I'll kind of divert that in a second because it makes me more secure in the fact that AI isn't going to totally take over the world. Because if it's really intelligence, it's almost like you're coming to the game with a child that has access to infinite amounts of information, but no real perspective of how to organize that information into ways that, like a little bit, I guess I should say a little perspective. But imagine like, I've got 9 kids and I correct them infinite times. But by the time they're an adult and ready to go out into the world, how often do you think I tell them to pick up their stuff and clean up their room? And like, maybe I'm not as good a parent as I need to be. I need to maybe have a heavier hand or not too heavy. Who knows? But like how many times you have to teach a kid to do something before they can actually do it the right way? It's way more than we probably think. And it's definitely more than one time. And it's often way more than 5 or 6 or 10 times, right? And so that's kind of how I've been thinking about AI, is that like if I were going to teach, if AI was going to replace your brain or my brain, it has to have infinite experiences for a lifetime. For 43 years, it would have to have that. So, and it would have to be able to do it and understand something enough to even just toy with the idea of like, how would I think about this in a different way? So, and if I might spend an hour or 2 trying to teach it to do something, like it'll do a good job. And maybe it can do it, maybe I can teach it 10 years of information in a few hours. But to get it right and nail it every time and then explore the idea in a way that really makes sense and is rational, is using information correctly, it takes time. So that's, I think to your point, that's where people will try it and it's like, it's not giving me the right information, I'm just going to abandon it.
Yeah. And they get frustrated and they think that it's crazy and stupid to use. And also, the other thing that people are doing right now that is frustrating to me is like there are well-paid speakers who will speak about AI and the power of AI and talk about AI, and then, but like nobody's practically really actually using it in their practice. You know what I mean? Like it's such a broad term that even
are there more people than you speaking about AI?
Well, so yeah, if you look at Vision Expo, some of the past ones, and there's one coming up now, and there's an AI event on Thursday night. I think that one's actually going to be really good. But Some of the ones that have spoken in the past, I have a good friend that has an AI lecturer that's really involved with the AOA. And it's like, okay, so practically in real life, like, what are you doing with it? And they're like, well, nothing, like, it's not ready yet. And I'm over here like, yes, it is. Like, we're doing this all the time.
You have to make it ready, right? You have to make it ready. All right. So okay. Yeah, that's frustrating. I mean, I think that's frustrating, Haley. Kind of, this is sort of a departure into the realm of speaking. Kyle Clutie and I have talked about this a number of times, not live, but with I've told you I uploaded all the CMS data for every physician in the entire country. There's millions and millions and millions of records, right? I mean, the upload file is astronomical. So I built a GPT, thanks to your encouragement, to basically analyze data, right? And it actually does this pretty well. Like, I can guide it pretty well, but what's great about it is I can say, can you find this doctor, this name in this state? And then it'll say, yes, I can find that doctor. Okay, well, tell me, and then I'll just start rattling off. Tell me their level 3 to level 4 ratio. Tell me their refraction, their anterior segment photo to refraction ratio. Tell me their OCT to refraction ratio. Tell me, I'll ask all these like medical KPIs, which is knowable in the CMS data. Mm-hmm. And really, CMS, since people aren't billing refractions, you can't really ask them about refractions, but you can ask them, okay, well, how many 9.2 codes? How many 9.9 codes? How many visual fields? And I will tell you, Haley, it is shocking the number of people that you can find that are big name speakers. And I can just type in, did you find this person? Yep, I can find him. Okay, well, tell me how many 9.9 codes did they bill? Exactly what did they bill last year? And I'm like, okay, either you're not billing, right? Or how many visual fields? Either you're not doing the visual fields, or you're doing them and not billing them, or you're not seeing patients at all, right? Like there's some people in our professions, like these guys are all over the place, and they're not billing to CMS. So either they're billing underneath the ophthalmologist that they work for, or they're not seeing patients at all.
Yeah,
so
they're telling you how to practice, anyway, but they're not actually practicing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other discussion. And obviously, like, you could get to the point. I mean, I get people ask me that all the time. They'll say, do you still see patients? Like, I'll walk into a room and like, it's almost like, hey, what's your street cred, Chris? Right, you still seeing patients, and so yeah, I mean, I get it. I think, but so I think your point about that is it's not condemning anybody. You can still know. I mean, you can build a lot of years. I've had conversations with people. You can build a lot of years of experience. And I think it's true. There's somebody that I think you'd respect a lot. I respect a ton. I haven't had a conversation with him on the podcast, but he's kind of a giant in our profession about some of the things he's done. But he hasn't seen patients in probably 10 years, I'm guessing, based on our conversation. And his point is right. He's like, you can stop seeing patients and and that might carry you 5-10 years. I think his number was like 10 years. Like, you could probably have street cred for about 10 years. And then you probably will lose a little bit because you just don't know what it's like to grind or implement new things, or, have the patient that's sitting in the chair and it's like, it's like, oh my gosh, I've explained this a million times and you're not understanding. And, oh, by the way, I got another patient that's next door. I mean, like, that stuff, you do have to do that. Right. And so I think the same thing can be said for AI.
Well, like right now with AI,
and it's not necessarily a condemnation, but
AI is this like untouchable subject that everybody thinks is coming down the road, and they just don't realize it's still in such infancy that there's so many people that don't realize how well it can be used already. And they just think that it's for writing emails and copy for websites and things like that, and they don't realize how deep you can go with it in a small business, much less a optometric practice. I mean, there's just so much we can do. So anyway,
that's where I want to parlay the conversation then, is like, okay, well, right now, so you say, we talked about some of the threats, some of the things that people fear. What's the opportunities? Where are you using it in your practice to help you be more efficient and deliver better care for patients?
So I think the really when my mind was blown was I am very much an eye doctor first, but I do own a business, and by lots and lots of luck and the grace of God, it is still surviving. But that's where, like, when it comes to my analytical skills as a business person, I've always had good ideas. Now, am I a good implementer of those ideas? No, I'm not. And so that's where being able to, so number one was I realized it could help me analyze my finances for my practice. How many, setting goals for the practice and seeing where I am already in relationship to those goals and what do I got to do to get there, and break it down for me step by step by step, month by month even, and not just for me, do it for each member of my team. I mean, like when I say there are truly infinite possibilities here, there are infinite possibilities here. But that's where, like, when it came to analyzing my business data, that's kind of where I started, and I was like, oh my gosh, like my life has gotten so much easier. So started there, and I've taken it to the front desk person, for example. If you've got a new person, you could technically upload insurance documents, de-identified though, to ChatGPT and say, help me explain this to the patient in a way that they can understand it. So you do have a copay for today. Your contact lens evaluation is not fully covered. You just have a percentage, whatever verbiage that you would be difficult for someone looking at this for the first time to say, you just say, put this in ChatGPT and tell it to tell you what to say, and it would spit it out. So and that's just one element of, like, the front desk, for example. But yeah, I mean, technicians, I have had it run on the tech side, and another doctor and I had this discussion. I have uploaded images of OCTs, and it has correctly diagnosed the image and analyzed the image.
Oh yeah, I think you showed me that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did it once, and it worked really well. I did it for a second lecture that I was in, and it didn't work at all. Like, it was completely like, you should see an eye doctor. And so it's going to just kind of vary like that. But the dream would be for that OCT report to come out and my tech to be able to copy and paste that somewhere so that I would be able to just look at the image, look at what it said, and either agree or disagree, fix it, etc. Because one of the, just charting and keeping charting down to a minimum, that would save some time, right? So optical wise, do an inventory. I think one of the things that we're going to be able to do is show images of our optical, and it will be able to see the frame, know the frame's name, etc., and then upload that to your EHR system, so that way you're not having to, like, make a manual, you're not having to go and scan, etc. Gosh, I mean, I don't know. What else you want to know? Where else you want to go? I can.
No, I mean, those are great examples. I mean, I think what I've found it to be very helpful with. So I do a lot of continuing education, and if I'm doing a new course, what I'll do is I'll build the course. Like the way my mind, like my process is okay. Well, usually I'll write. So I'll write like an outline. I'll write kind of the bullet points. I'll do the research I want to do. And then I'll kind of take it from there and build it. And then one of the things, and those are kind of critical steps for me. And I want to have my hands on them very well. And then I've got to sit and create a COPE outline for it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know how much you've uploaded stuff to COPE, but it's like, I'll send one thing over, and I'll tell you, this has gotten better. There's a guy that you and I both know, that has kind of really tried to change this process within COPE, but essentially, like, I actually have developed over the years, I have two outlines, one that I call the long form and one that I call the short form. And inevitably, last year's COPE approved course that has the short form, this year, if I submit the short form, will not be COPE approved. Like, they'll say, you need to lengthen it. So then I'll submit the longer form, or vice versa. Like, I'll submit the longer one and then I'll submit the shorter one. But the reality is like, this can take like an hour or more of your time to kind of organize this in the right way. Not anymore. I take my presentation that I've developed, and then I upload it to ChatGPT, and I say, give me a COPE outline. And I've uploaded, by the way, I mean, there's probably 30 or 40 COPE outlines that I've made that do exactly that. Give me a description, give me the objectives, give me the etc. And so I've taught it to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, I develop what I want to develop, and I say, now give me a COPE outline, and I want it timed for 50 minutes. And I mean, seconds, it's done. And it's great. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Like it does what and so, so like that's been huge, like that's a huge advantage in my mind. I've even got, I won't say this, but like I have lots and I mean, I have written hundreds and hundreds of pages of information that I've just written over the years. Well, now I can take like emails that I've answered, like I've answered thousands of emails, and I can take like bits and pieces. I can take those emails and I can say, provide me like I've trained another GPT to write, to like look at all the articles I've written. So I've written, like I said, hundreds of different pieces of information. I said, this is how Chris Wolfe writes. And so I still answer, like people that are emailing me, I still answer everybody's email. But like if I wanted to write an article about those emails over time, I've answered them, they're my words. And then I say, here's my emails, formulate a nice article for me about this in my writing style. And like, that's huge, right? It's still my ideas. I'm not stealing anybody's ideas. It's still my voice. I still go in and edit it, but I've already done the work once. Why should I do the same work 3 or 4 or 5 times in different places? So that's been helpful. It's been really helpful.
Well, so I've been writing some articles for Review of Optometric Business. Lori Sorensen asked me to write an article first about AI for Review of Optometric Business, and so I did. And did I use AI to write that? I absolutely did. And I've gotten asked to write several articles about AI. And all the times, of course, I have used AI to write the articles about AI. And
that's hilarious.
The other
so
thing,
what do you provide it? What do you provide to it to give it the guidance, the Haley Perry input? Because for me, it's like I'm not going to let it just go and do whatever, right? Like I'm telling it, this is my thoughts about this topic. Make it more coherent and readable. Basically.
100%. So almost all of what I've learned from AI about AI, I have learned from AI. So like half of what has gotten me here has been me asking questions about, well, what else can you do? Like, what else can you do without being connected to any other entity because you are non-HIPAA compliant? What can you help me with in my optometric practice? Like, this is how I built the course I've made, was like, what else am I not thinking of here that a technician can do with ChatGPT in an office? And then just keep going and keep asking the question, and then thinking about it in a different way, and then asking the question in a different way. And I know that sounds super complicated to people who have not used AI, but you do have to ask a good question, and then it will give you an answer. That'll spark some other thought in your brain, and then you ask the question a different way to get a better answer or a more, it's almost like an extension of your own brain. You're just sort of thinking out loud, and it's thinking out loud, and y'all are brainstorming things together. So when I'm writing about AI, some of the things that I have written, I have absolutely before gotten those ideas from AI. And so that's where when I'm writing, I've always used AI to do it, but like I said, I'm a huge voice to texter, always trying to save time. My grammar's terrible. You can ask any of my friends that I text with. And so that's where it cleans it up, because half the time my ADHD brain, I'm just so good at throwing out ideas, but if you want to get that in a nice, clear, coherent thing that's easy to read, it will organize it for me, if that makes sense. And so they asked me to write an article. So the last one that I wrote on AI, listen to this story. This is kind of funny. The last story they asked me to write on AI, they asked me if I was using AI to write the articles. And I was like, am I about to get in trouble? Because of course I have used AI to write about AI. So I was like, yes. And then here's how. And I'm losing all my earbuds keep falling out. But they, so I was like, of course I have. And so then they're like, okay, well, can you write us an article that's not on AI? Almost like, we don't want you to use AI this time. And of course, that's going to take me longer to do, because I have to sit and pine over the the details of is it coherent? Is it not? Does it flow well, etc.? And so it's always been my thoughts and my ideas.
CooperVision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today. One of the challenging things with patients is that when they invest in a really high quality pair of glasses and customized lenses, occasionally it can be difficult to keep those lenses clean, scratch-free, and smudge-free. Now, we have the ability with Crizal Sapphire HR lenses to offer our patients a best-in-class anti-reflective coating that is also resistant to scratches, smudges, and deposits. This means that patients spend more time enjoying clear and comfortable vision and less time caring for their lenses. So remember that you can provide patients with the best in quality, best in class, transparency, clarity, durability, and UV protection in a single Crizal coating. If you want to learn more about Crizal Sapphire HR, contact your Essilor account executive or visit essilorpro.com/Crizal. So that's interesting because then the challenge is like reading and writing sort of develop a certain portion of your brain that is like, obviously you've gotten to where you've gotten through all of the experience of actually having to organize your ideas and collect them in and present them in certain thought processes. So there's probably a potential problem with allowing that to be done with somebody else. And I think from a learning standpoint, I mean, you and I are beyond for ourselves, or probably beyond having to worry about that tainting our brain, because if you had to, you could sit and compose. It would take you a lot longer, but you could sit and compose an organized article, as opposed to like, I could think about this, I could talk about this, I could have all these ideas, and it actually, what you've done is you've allowed your brain to kind of grow in this idea space and play with new ideas, as opposed to worrying about the time it's taking to structure those ideas on paper. But you could do that. Where it's probably a problem is, like, if you were in school right now and you find this easy button to organize ideas better, there's probably a lot of learning that we have had over the years because we had to do that could be a big problem. I think it could even be a big problem to people who are in optometry school or medical school or dental school right now, right? Like, you've had AI now for 2 years, like AI is pretty well readily accessible for a couple of years. And, I can create a presentation and do all these things. Like, how do you know it's right? Like, I know if I ask it data questions, I know that does that make sense? Or that does not make sense? And like, are we getting the right information out of this? But it could be a big problem. So that could be a pitfall, I think, Haley. I think it could be a real big pitfall if we don't figure it out.
Well, that's where both of my kids have dyslexia. I actually think that doesn't fall very far from the tree as far as like organizing one's thoughts, having big, smart ideas, but not being able to articulate it well, because dysgraphia is the one that my oldest struggles with. And so like a huge disconnect between here and here. But if I could just tell you, if we can brainstorm together, I think you would see how brilliant I am, or how smart I am. That's how I look at my daughter, And so it's like, if we can just like let her talk to you instead of write it, although that's not how it's always been done. And so that's where I think, like, won't it be interesting to see in the future if there's more of the good idea that comes across, instead of making it have to be formed in such a way that is conformed to how we've always done it. And what will that look like with big ideas in the future, because we have AI to help structure those ideas and organize those ideas and those into something that could actually be done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'm not resisting the idea. I'm not resisting what you say, but I think it's something we should be concerned about, because the more I think about it now, it's like, yeah, I mean, you could make the same case. It's like, is handwriting important at all? Because all we're doing is typing now, and people who have horrible handwriting now can communicate for years now communicate in ways that people could read it. Well, now you're kind of, and so is handwriting that important? Like I write, so it's like, well, it's not that important now. So what is important? But are we losing other foundational skills because we don't have to use that? Or are we, and the big ideas that we get to have, are those big ideas actually grounded in like something that has a basis that is in fact something that is knowable? And so you have to have that foundation. So I think AI, I mean, the AI can help with all of those things, but it's not without its pitfalls.
That's true. And you bring about a good point. Like yesterday, my grandmother said, she was like, they're not teaching kids to write in cursive in public schools anymore. And I knew that, but my kids have learned to write in cursive. But she was like, how's anybody going to know how to sign their name? And I was like, that's a good point. I don't know. It's like, will we be signing our name in the future? I don't know.
I mean, right now we don't. Oftentimes you get an electric, a DocuSign, and it's just time stamped, and it says your name, and and
that's exactly right.
Sort of, yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah. So I want to take before I want to give you an opportunity to tell everybody about some of your offerings as a speaker, as some of your online offerings. But before we do that, let's terminate this idea. So 10 years in advance. So you say, well, we're not really worried about that, but I don't know. Could Skynet come down and we're going to wish that we never created AI? What is there to prevent AI from eradicating the humans?
To prevent them from eradicating the humans.
Yeah.
I think humans can still unplug the machine. We can still.
For now.
Yeah, for now, that's true. Well, I just look at the opportunity more than I look at my fear of it. So maybe if they're out there eradicating everybody else, they'll still like me enough that I'm getting to drive the ship.
Yeah, they're going to plug you into the Matrix.
Yeah, right. So what's there to prevent it? What don't I know yet? That's a question maybe I need to ask AI right now. I haven't thought about all of the infinite possibilities, mostly because I'm not a doomsayer. I'm really more of an opportunist. And so now it makes me want to go and write like a doomsayer's AI,
you should
thread. I think I will.
You should. That should be the next review of Optometric Business.
Yeah. Okay.
Like take all the fears of like, what are all the fears that people have about AI, and like, well, how legitimate is that? Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
I mean, the thing I really worry about in all of this is like, I mean, you've seen now, in this political culture, like all the memes of different advertisements that people are like making fun of. Like they'll take an advertisement from somebody and then they'll upload somebody else's voice and it sounds like the other person. Mm-hmm. Or even some of the videos. Like I was talking to Bob from Hoot. He hasn't been on the podcast yet, but he and I were just having a conversation, and he was showing me some of the AI technology where you can listen to somebody talk for like an hour. They'll record them, and then pretty soon, like now all of a sudden, like you don't have to actually you just tell whatever you want the narrative to be, and it's kind of glitchy, but it won't be always. And so like those are the kind of things like now we know what's fake. You put up an advertisement, it's like, oh, that's pretty funny. That's a funny advertisement. But like it's fake.
Yeah.
But what concerns me is when it's not, and that is a huge problem. And that has to do with both our technology that we have from like a video technology, but also like an AI technology too. Because right now you could tell it's fake, but pretty soon like it doesn't just have Haley's like look and sound, but it will learn your mannerisms. You know, it learns your pauses. It learns the way you think, the way you. That is what I. That is where you just got to like, yeah.
So there's
And that, I
parts
think
of
we are set up for that, and that's a bigger problem, I think, because then it infects people's brains and the way they think is like, well, who is this person that I'm even talking to? Unless you're actually sitting side by side instead of doing this remotely.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a part of that I think sounds really scary, right? Like what you said, like, look at how I write ChatGPT. I'm Chris Wolfe. This is who I am. Write this like
No,
I
I know
write it.
it's yeah.
And then Nicholas Sparks is, I love his books. What if I were to say, I want to write a story and I want you to write it in the way of that Nicholas Sparks writes. And then, but Nicholas Sparks, this is his intellectual property, sort of. And so we've used that in a way. That's the unethical side of AI.
It?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where there's going to be some more legislation that will come out that will, really work against stuff like that. In the same vein, though, there's already a EHR for optometry company that is going to debut like a phone operator, an AI-powered phone operator, and they say they're going to debut it, I believe, in September. And so imagine that right now my front desk lady's name is Patty, who runs the phones. And so imagine that we have used Patty's voice and Patty's inflection and all the things, and this person call in my office and they think it's Patty. And they still feel just as loved because we've taught to always be kind and have good conversation, to triage well, schedule appropriately, etc. And so right now I don't need that. I have Patty. But hiring people is becoming so difficult. Like, where are the people? And so I can see that there would be value to me maybe eventually in having something like that, or having different roles ran by AI. And so that's where there's a part of me that's hungry for that kind of stuff. There's a part of me that's afraid of that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. It's just a wait and see game at this point with something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. There was another point I was going to make about that because it popped into my brain, but I've lost it. Maybe if I had some more artificial intelligence, it would bring it back. But it's been a really fun conversation, Haley. I like to think about those potential pitfalls, and I like to think about the utility of it too. So you've taught me a lot about what we can do, and I think to your point, AI does have an ethical realm, and just like anything, it can be exploited. And I think for the most part, there's a lot of good that can come from it. There's a lot of things that we can do to improve our practices. But I think at the very least, it's worth knowing about. So where can people find you? What are you doing to help people understand more about AI, about actually how to use it and the technical aspects of learning what you can do with it and what you can't?
So I learned when I learned and realized what it could do for me, and I realized how far behind everybody is in thinking that AI is not something you can automatically use right now. They're still thinking that this is something that's still coming eventually. I was like, I could teach you how to do this. So I created a course. It's on iCode Education. It's AI and optometry and mastering AI and optometry. And what that course is how, just in full transparency, I created the course in like January and February of 2024. It has evolved so much already. But the course at the beginning starts at how it looked then, and then you're going through what AI is, how could you use it in optometry, and then let's break it down by roles with front desk technician, optometrist, optician, practice manager, and marketing professional in the office. And how could each one of those roles use it? And then after creating all of that, and it evolved even further, so there have been some updates along the way about how it's evolved and how you can use it even more. And as it continues to evolve, because there's going to be newer and newer things that are going to happen with ChatGPT, I'll continue to update that course. But you can go to iCode Education to see that. One of the things that I do is you can create tools called GPTs. You and I have done that. And in making GPTs, I have sort of released the mundane activities in my office and made it much quicker and more efficient. Things like, and my favorite one is the one that I made to analyze my contact lenses. So, and just as an example, now this is one example, lots of different ways you can use a GPT, but I wanted to know truly price per box if I went all in with one company versus another, after rebates and inventory, volume rebates, growth rebates, like how many rebates are, however many I can get from one company versus another. What's my true price per box if I went all in with company A versus company B, if I considered those two lenses to be clinically equivalent? And I wanted to know, just to make a better pricing strategy based on that. And so that helped me decide which way I was going with my contact lenses this year. There's other ways to use it though. Yeah. We use it for performance reviews. I mean, you can make these for anything, but all that to say, if there's something mundane or you feel like you're interested in hearing about how AI can benefit your practice and it may be customized to you and your practice, that is something that I am consulting doctors on already about how to do it in their practices and building GPTs for them. And then I am also available for a lecture because I'm excited to lecture at SECO this year with Dr. Brianna Rue and lecture to vision source doctors, as well as to a couple local societies. And so, yeah, it's something I use every day. I'm passionate about it and it helps. And I think people need it right now.
Yeah, awesome. Dr. Perry, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.